I'm Dr. Andrew Thaler, this is my buddy Lee, and we want to talk to you about microplastics in the deep sea.
As plastic trash enters the ocean, it is broken down into smaller and smaller fragments. These microplastics are increasingly found throughout ocean ecosystems, from the tropics to the high Arctic, and from the surface to the deepest abyss, and increasingly in the blood and tissue of animals that call these ecosystems home. While we're learning more and more about how plastic accumulates in many marine ecosystems, the deep sea remains largely a mystery. Over the last century, the deep ocean has become a reservoir for human garbage, and as much as 90% of all ocean plastics, much of which is unaccounted for, may dwell in the deep sea. We know very little about where this plastic is or what impacts it may have on deep sea ecosystems. I've recently taken custody of a unique collection of biological samples from the deep sea. Collected between 2007 and 2020, these samples cover macrofaunal organisms from deep-sea hydrothermal vents in the western Pacific, East Pacific, Atlantic, and Caribbean, and methane seeps from the Gulf of Mexico and Atlantic margin. This sample set provides a biogeographic snapshot of animals from some of the rarest and least understood places in the deep ocean. Using this sample collection, we can establish a baseline for microplastic accumulation in the tissue of deep-sea hydrothermal vent and methane seep organisms. This is a project of pure discovery. While we expect to see microplastics creeping into deep ocean animals, I genuinely have no idea what we're going to find. Are hydrothermal vent species, who thrive off the chemical energy released from cracks in the skin of the Earth, resistant to microplastic accumulation? What about the grazing species that live on and within them, or the scavengers that form a halo of life around a hydrothermal vent? Do methane seep species, who use a similar process but interface with the deep ocean sediment now known to house a hoard of plastic, differ in their rate of plastics accumulation from their vent brethren? What role does time or geographic distance from land play in the accumulation of plastics in the bodies of ocean animals? Thanks to access to facilities at the University of Maryland Horn Point Lab, we have all the necessary equipment to quantify microplastics accumulation in these deep sea species.
And that's where you come in. Funding from Experiment will allow us to conduct this initial pilot study, beginning with a few select species and branching out into the archive. Your contribution will directly fund this work and help provide the first glimpse of how human impacts are already shaping some of the most remote ecosystems on the planet. Thank you for your support.